Hey, and welcome back if you're returning. We are in part 2 of looking at every Grand Maester that has served the Royal of Westeros. Who were they? What are they known for? What was their influence? We're taking a look. Now, at the end of my last video, I also mentioned about whether or not we were seeing any breadcrumbs for the Citadel supposedly conspiring the downfall of the dragons. Marwyn certainly thinks that the Citadel is responsible for it. We'll keep an eye out. So, last time we looked at the first Grand Maester all the way up to the two that were serving at the end of the Dance of Dragons. So, today, we're kicking off post-war with the next official Grand Maester, which was Muncan in 131 AC, and he was serving the child king Aegon Targaryen III. Muncan laced Princess Jaehaera's milk with sweet sleep before her wedding, believing she would have collapsed during the ceremony if he had not done so. On the 6th day of the third moon of 132 AC, Muncan came rushing to Lord Corlys Velaryon's aid when he collapsed ascending the serpentine steps of the Red Keep. However, Muncan arrived too late, and the sea snake was already dead. When the Council of Regents discussed the matter of the royal succession, Muncan raised that neither Baela nor Rhaena Targaryen could be the king's heir, as both were female, stating that a male claim must be considered as the Great Council of 101 had determined. But then Viserys did name a female heir, did he not? Anyway, when Sir Tywin Lannister countered that there were no living Targaryen men, Muncan said that he would research the issue, but could offer no potential heir until the return of Prince Viserys in 134 AC. In 133 AC, Muncan went to examine the sick in King's Landing, ascertaining that the contagion was indeed the winter fever. He sent an acolyte to give the news to Tywin Lannister, fearing that he might have become afflicted himself. Muncan did indeed catch the winter fever, but he was one of the lucky 1 in 4 who recovered from the disease. As soon as Sir Robert Darkling commanded the Red Keep's gates be opened again, Muncan rushed back to the castle. Before the Maiden's Day Ball, Muncan examined Tyshaara Lannister after she was found abed with a groom, finding that her maidenhead was broken. Oh, the jobs of old men, right? Muncan was able to determine that Gaemon Pelhair and Queen Daenerys had been poisoned. He gave the queen a powerful purgative, but was unable to save the king's food taster. In 135 AC, the Rhaegar family fell into disgrace. Lord Rowan was removed as Hand, being replaced by Lord Commander of the King's Guard, Sir Marston Walters, who ordered the arrest of Lara Rhaegar. In response, the king shut his family in Maegor's Holdfast. On the 4th day of the secret siege, Muncan asked the king to come out of his seclusion. The king refused and commanded Muncan to send ravens across the realm to let them know of the situation, though Muncan did not do so. He continued to make further appeals, assuring the king and Prince Viserys that all that had been done was lawful. At the end of the siege, Muncan treated Marston Walters after he had been stabbed by Sir Mervyn Flowers, but the knight died that night. The king still refused to leave the keep, until Muncan sent forth a murder of ravens to summon 20 leal lords to King's Landing. Lord Thaddeus Rowan was reinstated as Hand at the end of the secret siege, yet it was clear that the man was not himself after his torture. Muncan convinced the king to relinquish Lord Rowan of his position, and Muncan was thus elevated as Hand himself. However, Muncan was mindful of his duties as Maester. Believing that it was not his place to pass judgment on knights and lords, he neglected his new office and planned to resign it when it was possible. At the so-called Great Council of 136 AC, Muncan stepped down and the Lord Torren Manderley was chosen as Hand by the Lords of the Realm. He also made the suggestion that the 3 new regents should be chosen by lot, which was done when Prince Viserys agreed with the Grand Maester's suggestion. For the office of Lord Confessor, Muncan suggested Maester Rowley, as a maester would know how to inflict pain, but see it as a duty rather than seek pleasure in it. Muncan was the only member of the council that held the office from 131 to 136 AC, when the council was dissolved after the king came of age. He wrote a book, The Dance of Dragons, a true telling, about the civil war of the Dance of Dragons. Presumably, the Citadel then sent a new Grand Maester, which was Grand Maester Alfred, to serve the adult Aegon III. It's the Citadel's decision to make and unmake Grand Maesters, so we're not told about Aegon's, decision to ask for a new Grand Maester. We can only assume that the Citadel elected and sent Alfred. So, we know that Alfred was Grand Maester in 153 AC, when Prince Daeron Targaryen was born to Prince Aegon and Princess Nerys on the last day of the year. Alfred warns them that another pregnancy might kill the princess. I don't think this is a chance for the Grand Maesters to stop a Targaryen bloodline, because Aegon had 5 children, and it was quite known that he had a distaste for dragons after the events of the war. We'll just leave it at that. Aegon, in fact, is often blamed for the death of the last dragon, with some rumours claiming he poisoned her. After the last dragon died in 153 AC, Aegon III became known as Aegon the Dragonbane. However, he was later encouraged by his brother Viserys that dragons could be used to cow those who sought to oppose him. Aegon brought 9 mages from Essos to attempt to hatch a clutch of dragon eggs with magic, but this ended in failure. Aegon's reign ended with his death from consumption in 157 AC at the age of 36. Many of his subjects thought him far older, on account of his youth having ended so abruptly. Which starts to look a bit likely that if the Citadel had it out for dragons, they liked this king until he started to bring dragons back, and then he was... Perhaps Alfred outlived Aegon and the following king, Daeron I. We don't know. It's only a matter of 30 years, so he could have died, and there's maybe one or more Grand Maesters who served in between. We don't know. Or he could have just served consecutively until he died. The history isn't established on Daeron's Grand Maester, but we do know that old Muncan returned for the next king, Baelor I. When King Baelor collapsed from fasting after the birth of Daemon Waters in 171 AC, Muncan tried to heal the king, but Baelor died. Succeeding Baelor I as ruler of Westeros was Viserys II up to the following year. He seemed to be making good progress as king, but died suddenly. His suspected poisoner was, of course, his heir Aegon IV, who then took over. Aegon IV is generally considered to be one of the worst kings in the history of Westeros, and is dubbed Aegon the Unworthy, in the face of his excess and misrule. And like many other Targaryen kings, Aegon was obsessed with regaining dragons for his house. Instead of trying to resurrect the dead dragons of his ancestors, Aegon commanded the pyromancers to build me dragons. Hundreds of men died whilst trying to operate the alchemist's 7 mechanical dragons with jets of wildfire, destroying a quarter of the king's wood. The reign of the unworthy monarch ended early in 184 AC. At only 49 years of age, he had become so morbidly obese that he could not walk anymore, making many wonder how his last mistress could endure his embrace. Aegon died a horrible death, his bloated body so swollen that he could not even lift himself from his couch, that he became covered in his own feces. Aegon's limbs were rotting and crawling in hosts of flesh worms, and the maesters said that they had never seen the like of this before. The Septons, however, pronounced it a judgment of the gods. He was given milk of the poppy to try and dull the pain, but nothing else could be done. We don't know who Aegon IV's Grand Maester is. If there is a conspiracy to stop the dragons being brought back, then Aegon IV would have been a big problem, so yeah. But his death, good grief. That echoes Arya Targaryen, coming back on Balerion and being filled with fireworms. How could a Grand Maester cause that? I don't know. Maybe he just got severe infections from being so dirty and unable to clean. Anyway, King Daeron II followed and reigned for 25 years, and for most of those years he had seen peace and plenty for the realm. We don't know anything about his Grand Maester, but I imagine the Citadel were happy enough with him, as we don't hear any obsession about rebirthing dragons, so all good. King Daeron II died in 209 AC during the Great Spring Sickness, along with two of his grandchildren, Prince Valar and Mataris. It was an epidemic plague that killed tens of thousands across the Seven Kingdoms, and it was not a classist sickness. Nobles and lowborns alike died, so it's not hard to see how that might have wiped out the king. But equally, it's also a good excuse to wipe out the king on the quiet. The following king was Aerys I. He was very much interested in books about ancient prophecy and the higher mysteries. At some point, Aerys read a prophecy that spoke about the return of dragons. Aerys appointed his uncle, Brynden Rivers, known as Bloodraven, as hand and let him rule while he occupied himself with a study of books and lore. A new Grand Maester was also elected and said to be involved in sorcery. We don't know the name of this one either, but it sounds like he wouldn't have been conspiring the downfall of dragons if he himself is said to be steeped in sorcery. Still, that's not to say that the Grand Maester wasn't just sorceress by association. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. It would be cool if the Grand Maester was the former Archmaester of Higher Mysteries. That would be cool. Anyway, Aerys died in 221 AC, supposedly of natural causes, and Maekar I succeeded him as king. Maekar summoned his third son, Aemon, who had already earned a Maester's chain, to court in 217 AC to serve the Iron Throne, not wanting to sit on the small council as he felt it would displace the Maester. Aemon chose instead to serve his eldest brother, Daeron, the Prince of Dragonstone. This lasted until Daeron died, reputedly from a pox he caught from Lady of the Night. In 232 AC, Maekar's second son, Aerion, also predeceased his father, after drinking a cup of wildfire in the belief that it would turn him into a dragon. Not smart. Dumb ways to die. In 233 AC, Maekar fell in battle, fighting a rebellious lord on the Dornish marches during the Peak Uprising. I doubt his Grand Maester would have really had anything to do with that. The following king was Aegon V. He had 4 Grand Maesters that we know about. In 257 AC, Kaith was made Grand Maester at the age of 80 and sent to serve the court of King Aegon V. He wrote the well-regarded work The Lives of 4 Kings, which we see Joffrey / in Game of Thrones, a detailed history of the reigns of Daeron I, Baelor I, Aegon IV, and Daeron II. Kaith scanced Viserys II terribly. However, his short reign as king came after Baelor's. The book is considered to be an excellent treatise on the art of rulership. Sir Kevin Lannister and his nephew Tyrion Lannister are among its appreciators, as is Prince Oberyn Martell. He died, though, within a year of his appointment, and was succeeded by Grand Maester Elendor. Elendor was elected as Grand Maester when he was close to 90 years old, in about 258 AC. Unsurprisingly, he also died within a year of his appointment, and then was succeeded by Grand Maester Merrion, who was 66. This guy, not even as old as the others, he died on his way to King's Landing. After being elected as Grand Maester the next year, his work, The Red Dragon and the Black, was left unfinished. The book describes, possibly amongst other things, the events leading up to the First Blackfire Rebellion. It is Marion's work that suggests that Brynden Rivers was involved in King Daeron II, learning that Daemon Blackfire meant to declare himself king within a moon's turn. He once referred to the custom of Lys, Myr and Tyrosh to grant licenses on ships to prey upon those of their foes as piracy with a wax seal. His death was in 259 AC, which was the same year as the tragedy at Summerhall, which is connected to King Aegon's desire to restore dragons. The last years of his reign, whilst presumably unsupervised by the Citadel, were consumed with finding out information of ancient lore to do with dragon breeding practices of old Valyria. He even commissioned journeys to places as far away as Asshai, with the hopes of finding texts and knowledge that had not been preserved in Westeros. Jaehaerys II then took over ruling, and as far as we know, the only serving Grand Maester from 259 AC to present day is Grand Maester Pycelle. Pycelle also wrote the Observations upon the Recent Bloodletting on the Stepstones about the War of the Ninepenny Kings. Pycelle only has sparse hair that runs around his bald, spotted head. He also has a long, snowy beard that runs down to his chest and broad stomach. If you've watched my Weight and Wealth videos, maybe he was a slim man before he came to King's Landing. Anyway, Pycelle often strokes his beard, which is to hide his small mouth, missing teeth, warts and wrinkles. He has pale, rheumy eyes. They don't sound very nice. What is rheumy eye? Pycelle's maester's chain consists of 24 heavy chains wound together to stretch from neck to breast. Its links consist of brass, bronze, copper, iron, gold, lead, platinum, silver, steel and tin, and the chain is decorated with amethysts, black pearls, emeralds, garnets and rubies. Instead of the grey robes worn by most maesters, Pycelle wears a red velvet robe with an ermine collar and golden fastenings. Pycelle bends the vows of his order to suit his needs, indulging in the needs of the flesh and dabbling in poisons and politics with a skill few maesters dare to approach. He also enjoys sweetened ice milk. During the reign of Aerys II, Pycelle came to greatly admire and respect Aerys's hand, Tywin Lannister. Out of all of the members of the small council, Pycelle assisted Tywin the most with the governance of the realm. Pycelle wrote to the Citadel often, praising Tywin's leadership, stating that the man was born to rule. While Aerys grew increasingly jealous and resentful of Tywin's capability, Pycelle became a staunch ally to the Hand, until Tywin resigned his office in 281 AC, following Jaime being knighted and made Kingsguard. Aerys also mistrusted his own son and heir, Prince Rhaegar, who had become wary of his father's behaviour. At court, tensions were growing between the factions loyal to the king and those loyal to Rhaegar. It fell to Pycelle and the new hand, Lord Owen Merryweather, to try to keep the peace between the factions. Pycelle even dispatched a letter to the Citadel, writing that tensions and division at court strongly resembled those before the Dance of Dragons. Pycelle was fearful that a civil war between those loyal to the king and Rhaegar supporters would break out unless some accord could be reached that would satisfy both factions. Near the end of Robert's rebellion, Pycelle convinced King Aerys to open his gates to his former hand, Tywin, in the hopes that Tywin would take the throne. This led to the sack of King's Landing. During the coronation of Robert Baratheon I, Pycelle was pardoned for his service under King Aerys and allowed to continue on the small council. Despite his oath to serve the realm, Pycelle has generally promoted the interests of House Lannister on the council for years. At this point, it's quite clear that Pycelle had a love for Tywin and wanted him to rule over his king that he was sworn to. ultimately he's supposed to serve the realm. I don't think he should have done what he did, but oh well. Either way, he continues to stay in court and serve Robert Baratheon as Grand Maester. Lysa Arryn reports to his sister, Catelyn Stark, that Pycelle was helpless in saving the life of the Hands of the King, Lord Jon Arryn. Pycelle convenes an urgent meeting of the small council upon Ned's arrival from Winterfell to take up the role of Hand of the King, and when Ned makes inquiries about the death of the previous Hand, Pycelle states that, from his experience, Jon's illness did not seem suspicious. When confronted with Lysa's accusations that poison was the culprit, he points the finger of suspicion on Lord Varys. Pycelle provides Eddard with the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms, with descriptions of many High Lords and noble ladies and their children, which Lord Arryn had been reading. The Grand Maester supports assassinating Daenerys Targaryen before she can provide Khal Drogo with an heir. After Ned's injured in a street fight with Sir Jaime Lannister, Pycelle tasks himself with maintaining Eddard's healing. When it's discovered that Sir Gregor Clegane had led raids into the Riverlands, burning several villages, Pycelle tries to delay any action taken against Lord Tywin Lannister. Eddard becomes more and more convinced that Pycelle is the creature of Queen Cersei Lannister, when it's probably more of a case him knowing the truth about Cersei's children and wanting to protect his beloved Tywin's interests and his reputation. But he did provide Ned with the book, and, that kind of gives him the breadcrumbs to start the Lannister-Stark conflict. Pycelle tends to King Robert's wounds after he is injured by a boar in the Kingswood, and he reports to Eddard upon Robert's death. He is present when Eddard presents Robert's will and is arrested at court. Pycelle wears black to mourn Robert's death. Under Cersei's direction, Pycelle visits the grief-stricken Sansa Stark after her father's execution and examines her intrusively before giving a potion to calm her, because good God, I bet she needed calming after that. When Tyrion comes to court to serve Joffrey as Hand of the King in Tywin's stead, he can't be sure who to trust, so he tells different secrets to Varys, Peter Baelish and Pycelle, tasking the Grand Maester with sending 2 copies of a single letter to Doran Martell, the Prince of Dorne. Pycelle does send 1 copy, but shares the other one with Cersei, who proceeds to confront Tyrion, unwittingly falling into Tyrion's trap. In the time it takes Pycelle to send one of the letter's copies, Tyrion has time to help himself to a mild poison from the Maester's cabinet, which he later uses on Cersei. Just a little bit of the bad belly. At midnight, Tyrion takes Shagga and Timett and confronts Pycelle in his chambers, where he is found naked in bed with a servant girl. Tut-tut, that's against your Maester's vows. If he'll break that one, for sure, who knows what else he'll break? With help from Shagga, Tyrion intimidates Pycelle, who wets the bed in fear of the clansman. While Shagga shaves off Pycelle's signature white beard with his axe, Tyrion learns Pycelle has betrayed the realm over and over in service to House Lannister. He allowed Jon Arryn to die when he could have easily saved him. Convinced Aerys Targaryen II to open the gates to Tywin's forces during Robert's rebellion, and would have finished Robert off himself if the wounds from the boar had not been so fatal. Pycelle justifies Jon's death since he was close to the truth about Cersei's incest with her brother, Jaime, and King Joffrey's parentage. He admits Maester Coleman was treating Lord Arryn properly, but the Queen needed him dead. Pycelle justifies Robert's death since his brother Renly had been plotting with the Tyrells to kill Cersei and wed Margaery Tyrell to Robert. Tyrion has Pycelle thrown in one of the black cells and stripped of his title and seat in the council. Pycelle is restored to his position by Lord Tywin Lannister after he learns the Citadel is planning on naming Gorman Tyrell as Pycelle's replacement. Pycelle, with his beard shaved off and weakened from his time in the black cells, appears to be a broken man. He falls asleep during the wedding of King Joffrey and Margaery and is unable to take any action to prevent Joffrey's death, something that sours Queen Cersei's opinion of him. During the trial of Tyrion Lannister for Joffrey's murder, Pycelle is called as a witness for the prosecution to discuss poisons and how Tyrion might have killed the king. Pycelle continues his service to the newly crowned king, Tommen Baratheon I, and is ordered by Tywin to heal Sir Gregor Clegane, who was poisoned by Prince Oberyn Martell in the trial by combat and is slowly dying. Tywin plans on having Gregor executed to appease House Martell, but needs it to be seen as the king's justice who does the deed, not poison. Pycelle is unsuccessful, and Tywin refuses his suggestion of confining the other Dornishmen till they reveal what poison Oberyn used, as Tywin cannot risk further offending Dorne. Following Tywin's death, Cersei is Queen Regent and announces the naming of the disgraced former Maester, Qyburn, to the small council, which Pycelle protests, but it happens anyway. With his lovely Tywin gone and Cersei mistrusting him, it seems like he needs to find loyalty to the other side of the crown. Taena of Myr casts suspicion on Pycelle when she reports to Cersei that he is often found in the company of Queen Margaery Tyrell. Pycelle objects to many of Cersei's edicts, such as her refusing to honour the debts the crown owes to the Iron Bank of Braavos, and her decision to allow the Faith of the Seven to reinstitute the Faith Militant. After pressure from Cersei, Pycelle admits publicly to bringing Marjorie Moontea a contraceptive. This discovery is crucial in Cersei's efforts to frame Marjorie for adultery and treason, delivering her to the captivity of the new High Septon. Cersei considers having him replaced, and Pycelle's future at court looks uncertain. However, when Cersei is arrested by the Faith, Pycelle successfully seizes control of the council, as Aurene Waters and Orton Merryweather have abandoned the capital. He removes Osfryd Kettleblack as commander of the Gold Cloaks, so Osfryd will not be able to use the Watch to try and free Cersei and his brother Osney, both of whom are prisoners of the Faith. He also raises Humphrey Waters of the Dragon Gate to command the Watch. Qyburn states to Cersei that the realm is effectively being ruled by Pycelle and Harys Swift. Pycelle dispatches a message to Sir Kevan Lannister offering him the regency. Pycelle continues his duty as Grand Maester, but is wary of Lord Mace Tyrell, who is wroth with Pycelle for revealing Marjorie's requests for Moontea. He requests guards from Sir Kevan Lannister out of fear for his personal safety. Pycelle's fears prove to be justified, as he is killed in his chambers, not by Tyrell men, but by Lord Varys, who removes both him and Kevan to ensure that they cannot repair the damage Cersei had done to the kingdom and the Tyrell Lannister alliance. Pycelle has served 6 kings during his time as Grand Maester: Aegon V, Jaehaerys II, Aerys II, Robert I, Joffrey I, and Tommen I. But ultimately, I think we can all agree Pycelle only really served himself. We've got honourable mentions for some Grand Maesters we do also know about, but we don't know who they served. Grand Maester Ethelmere, whose biography exists in the library at Winterfell, and whose harsh views on poisoners is referenced by Grand Maester Pycelle. Grand Maester Clegg. At the end of the First Dornish War, Princess Doreah Martell presented to King Aegon a letter from her father. Although the contents of the letter was never revealed, many have speculated on its content. Grand Maester Clegg, who came to King's Landing many years later, concluded that Dorne no longer had the strength to fight. Clegg suggested Prince Nymor might have threatened that, should his peace be refused, he would engage the faceless men of Braavos to kill King Aegon's son and heir, Aenys, who was then 6 years old. Clegg's suggestion was never proven. We've also got Grand Maester Graydon, who wrote a definitive history of the Triarchy in 182 AC, 53 years after the beginning of the Dance of Dragons. Grand Maester Harith, who we only know about him, he was executed for treason, apparently. Do you reckon he was one of Maegor's? We've also got Grand Maester Lucan, who wrote about the reasoning behind why King Aegon I couldn't make peace with the Dornishmen at the end of the First Dornish War. Grand Maester Malian, he wrote a book on the lineages of the Seven Kingdoms. He was the one that wrote the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms, with descriptions of many high lords and noble ladies and their children. Malian was likely King Daeron II's Grand Maester, because his book was over a century old, and Ned thought scarcely a man now alive had yet been born when Malian was working on it, which suggests his time was between 100 and 120 years before Ned's time. Moreover, Malian's book describes the marriage of Gawain Baratheon and Tywin Lannister, which occurred at the end of Daeron's reign. So I guess it's time for the Citadel to send a new Grand Maester when they learn that Pycelle's dead. We know of one person that's not going to be, and that's because he's not there. It's Marwyn. He's on his way to Meereen to go and see Daenerys and try and advise her. Should he actually reach her and be taken into her service, I'd like to think that she follows in Rhaenyra's footsteps and names her own Maester as her Grand Maester. I think that would be really cool. And after all, he's the only one, from the Citadel that believes in magic. He's got a glass candle on the go. And, that's the whole reason he's got a bad reputation at the Citadel, because they're against it. Are they not? Did you see any breadcrumbs? Let me know. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think Marwyn's right? Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. Have a good day, and cheerio.